Desmond Carter was 42 years old the morning his wife told him to get out. She sat across from him at the kitchen table, calm, cold, already decided, and told him the marriage was over. He didn't argue, didn't beg, just stood up, straightened his shirt, and said he'd be gone by Monday. That's when Diana's composure cracked into something uglier. She looked at the man she'd spent 6 years beside, the man who drove a 4-year-old Camry, packed his own lunch, and coached kids on weekends, and she laughed. "You don't have anything," she said. "Good luck being homeless." Desmond walked out to the front porch and made a single phone call. 2 words. That was all. Within minutes, the neighborhood went quiet in that particular way people go quiet when something impossible is happening in front of them. Doors opened, neighbors stepped outside, and Diana Carter, standing at her bedroom window, watched an unmarked private helicopter descend from the Atlanta sky and land at the end of her street. She had just kicked out a man she never bothered to know. That was her first mistake. It would not be her last. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The lawn on Sycamore Drive looked its best in the early morning. The dew was still on the grass. The magnolia trees held their big white blooms like they were proud of something. Desmond Carter stepped off his front porch at 7:45, lunch bag in one hand, car keys in the other, and paused for just a second to look at the yard next door. Marcus Webb's fence was leaning again. The left post had been slowly losing its fight with the Georgia clay for 3 weeks now. Desmond made a mental note. Saturday. He'd bring the post hole digger. He got into the Camry and set his lunch on the passenger seat. The watch on his wrist was a Timex. It kept perfect time. That was all he'd ever needed a watch to do. Inside the house, Diana Carter stood at the kitchen counter in a silk robe that Desmond had not seen before. It was a deep burgundy, expensive looking. She was scrolling through her phone, and when his footsteps reached the kitchen doorway, she did not look up. "I'll be in Charlotte until Thursday," he said. "Consulting work?" She turned her phone face down on the counter. A smooth, practiced motion, like breathing. He walked over and kissed her on the cheek. She accepted it without moving. Her skin smelled like a perfume he didn't recognize either. "I'll call you tonight," he said. "Sure." That was it. He carried the quiet of that moment all the way to the car. The neighbors knew Desmond Carter the way you know someone who never gives you a reason to doubt him. They knew him as the man who had shoveled Ruth Ann Peoples' driveway 3 winters running after her hip replacement, without being asked, without mentioning it afterward. They knew him as Coach Carter, who ran Saturday basketball at the Southside Rec Center and remembered every kid's name without writing it down. Not just the ones who could play, but the quiet ones who couldn't. The ones who needed to be somewhere safe for 2 hours on a weekend morning. He had never raised his voice on that court. Not once. When a kid messed up a play, Desmond would just crouch down, get eye level with him, and talk through it. Calm, patient, like he had all the time in the world. The neighborhood respected him in the uncomplicated way people respect someone who simply shows up. Every time. Without applause. Diana did not coach basketball. Diana did not shovel anybody's driveway. Diana attended the block parties in dresses that cost more than the food, smiled at the right moments, and left early. She was not disliked. She was simply separate. Desmond had noticed the distance growing. He was not a man who pretended otherwise to himself. He saw the phone, face down, every time he entered a room. He noticed the weekend trip to Savannah last month, the girls' trip with her friend Tamara, the one he had paid for without hesitation, the one she had returned from without a single story. No funny moment at dinner. No complaint about the hotel sheets. Nothing. Like she had been somewhere entirely different, doing something entirely different, and the story was just a wrapper around it. He had also noticed the robe this morning, and the perfume, and the silence that had been getting heavier for months, not lighter. He noticed. He said nothing. He drove. 20 miles outside Atlanta, the highway gave way to a 2-lane road that cut through a stretch of Georgia pine. There were no billboards out here. No gas stations, just trees, a low morning sky, and a black iron gate set into a stone wall that appeared around a bend like it had always been there. Desmond slowed the Camry and pressed the entry card to the reader. The gate swung open. The building beyond it was clean and modern. 4 stories of glass and pale concrete set back from a wide executive lot. The landscaping was precise without being showy. A single line of letters ran across the entrance in brushed steel, each one no taller than a hand's width. Carterbridge Holdings. He parked in the spot closest to the side entrance. Not the one marked Reserved, CEO. He never used that one. TJ, his assistant, met him just inside the lobby doors, already talking. 24 years old, sharp as a tack, carrying a leather portfolio like it contained national secrets. "Morning, Mr. Carter." Quarterly briefings at 9. The Meridian contract renewal came in overnight. Numbers look good. And Darius is already in the conference room. He says it's not urgent, but he's been in there since, what, 7? TJ smiled. 7:15. Desmond shook his head and kept walking. Darius was standing at the window when Desmond came in, looking out over the lot with a coffee in his hand. He turned around. The brothers looked at each other the way men do when they've been through enough together that words are sometimes optional. "She call you this morning?" Darius asked. "Texted." Desmond set his bag down and took his seat at the head of the table. TJ opened his portfolio and began walking through the contract numbers. Desmond listened. He asked the right questions at the right moments. His mind was present and precise. It always was in this room. But once, during a pause in TJ's briefing, he looked down at his phone. Diana's text was still on the screen, sent 40 minutes after he'd kissed her goodbye. "When are you home? Not miss you, not safe travels. Just, when are you home?" He set the phone face down on the table. TJ kept talking. He came home Thursday instead of Friday. No particular reason. The Charlotte work had finished early, and the highway was clear. And somewhere around the 2-hour mark, Desmond had simply decided that his own bed was better than another hotel room with thin walls and air conditioning that rattled. It was 10:22 p.m. when he turned onto Sycamore Drive. Diana's car was in the driveway. The house was dark except for the small light above the kitchen stove, the one they always left on. He pulled in quietly, cut the engine, and sat for a moment. The neighborhood was still. A dog barked once somewhere down the block, and then stopped. He grabbed his bag and went inside. The house had that particular silence of a place where someone is sleeping, heavy, settled. He moved through the front room without turning on a light, his eyes already adjusted to the dark. He would grab some water, go up, and not wake her. He turned into the kitchen. The laptop was open on the counter. The screen was still bright. It hadn't gone to sleep yet. Diana must have stepped away recently, or gone to bed in a hurry, and simply forgot. Desmond set his bag down. He looked at the screen without touching it. It was an email thread, a long one. The name at the top of the inbox read, Reginald Okafor. He should have walked away. He knew that, in some distant, clinical part of himself. A man who respects his wife's privacy walks away. He read the first line. Then he pulled out the counter stool and sat down. He read for 11 minutes. He knew because he checked the clock when he started, and checked it again when he stopped. The emails went back 14 months. 14 months of a different life running parallel to the one Desmond thought he was living. Reginald's messages were familiar in the way that meant this was not new for either of them, easy and comfortable and full of small private references that accumulate between two people over time. But it was not the romance that held Desmond still. It was the second thread, nested inside the same conversation. Dates, numbers, names of attorneys. Diana had consulted 2 divorce lawyers, one in Buckhead, one downtown, in the last 4 months. She had built a list: the house, its estimated equity, their joint checking and savings accounts, Desmond's 401k, which she had found on a statement he'd left in the Home Office 2 years ago. Reginald had been advising her on timing, on how to file first, what to request, how to position herself before Desmond had any idea the ground was moving. Their target date was 6 weeks out. And then there was the line. Diana had written it 3 weeks ago, in response to something Reginald had apparently said about being careful. "Don't worry so much. He's never going to see it coming. Sweetest, dumbest man I've ever met." Desmond read it once, then once more. He closed the laptop, carefully, the same way he closed everything, without force, without drama. He pressed it shut until the click came. He stood in the kitchen for a long moment. The stove light hummed above him. The refrigerator ran its quiet cycle. Outside, a car passed on the street, its headlights sweeping briefly through the window before moving on. Desmond breathed. He thought about his mother, about the way she used to say that a man who reacts before he understands has already lost half the fight. He thought about the way Diana had kissed him back this morning, or hadn't really. He thought about the robe he hadn't seen before, and the perfume he didn't recognize, and 14 months of face-down phones. He was not surprised. That was the thing that sat with him the longest, standing there in the dark. He was not surprised. He had known something was wrong. He had chosen, for a long time, to believe in the version of his marriage he wanted, rather than the one in front of him. That choice had cost him. He felt the weight of it land now, fully, for the first time. He let it land. He did not push it away. Then he went upstairs. He stood in the bedroom doorway. Diana was asleep on her side, one arm stretched across his half of the bed. Her breathing was slow and even. She looked peaceful in a way that, an hour ago, he would have found comforting. He watched her for a while. He did not wake her. He went back downstairs to the kitchen, sat at the counter, and picked up his phone. Lenora Banks answered on the 3rd ring. Her voice was alert. She had always been a light sleeper. "Des, you weren't asleep," he said. "Not really." "What happened?" He told her. All of it. He kept his voice low and level, the way he kept it in every boardroom, through every hard quarter, through every decision that had felt like standing at the edge of something. When he finished, there was a short silence on the line. "She doesn't know what she doesn't know," he said. "I want to keep it that way until I'm ready." Lenora exhaled slowly. "I'll need 3 weeks to pull the full framework together. You have 2. A pause. Then, "Okay." He hung up. He turned off the stove light. He walked down the hall to the guest room and sat on the edge of the bed in the dark. He did not sleep. Saturday morning came in gray and quiet. Desmond was already at the kitchen table when Diana came downstairs. He had made eggs. There was toast on a small plate beside his coffee mug. He was reading something on his phone, relaxed, like a man with nowhere to be and nothing pressing on his mind. He did not look up when she entered. Diana paused in the doorway. Her robe was the ivory one, the expensive one. Her hair was wrapped. She looked at him the way you look at something that doesn't quite fit in the room. She moved to the counter and poured herself coffee. Then she sat down across from him. He glanced up. "Morning." "Morning," she said. She wrapped both hands around her mug. She had been rehearsing this since last night, since Reginald had called. His voice tighter than usual, clipped, telling her to move the timeline up. "Don't wait 6 weeks. Do it now. This week if you can." She'd asked him why. He said he'd explain later. She hadn't slept well after that, but she was ready. She had always been good at beginnings. "I want a divorce." she said. Clean, direct, no preamble. Desmond set his phone face down on the table. He looked at her without any particular expression. Okay, he said. Is there someone else? That's not the point. I'm just asking. The point, she said, is that this marriage isn't working. It hasn't been working for a long time. I think we both know that. He nodded slowly. He picked up his fork and took a bite of his eggs, chewed, set the fork down again. He did not argue. He did not ask her to reconsider. He did not reach across the table or lower his voice, or do any of the things she had prepared herself for. The silence stretched. Diana felt something shift, a small, quiet irritation moving up through the rehearsed calm. She had expected resistance, pleading maybe. At minimum, the kind of wounded confusion that would let her feel magnanimous as she explained her terms. He just sat there, eating his eggs. I'll be fair about it, she said, her voice tightening at the edges. You can take your car, your clothes, your... She paused, and something flickered behind her eyes, something like pleasure. Your little consulting checks. I'm not trying to make this ugly. That's generous of you, Desmond said. He said it without sarcasm, without anything at all, which was somehow worse. So, we're agreed, she said. I'll be out by Monday. He stood. He picked up his plate and carried it to the sink. He rinsed it with the same unhurried care he brought to everything. No clattering, no performance. He dried his hands on the dish towel and straightened his shirt. Diana stayed at the table. She stared at his back. This was wrong. This was not how it was supposed to go. He was supposed to fall apart, not tidy up. She stood. Desmond. He turned. You don't have anything, she said. The civility was gone now. Her voice had dropped into something flatter and harder. So, I need you to understand what I'm saying. You don't have anything. What exactly do you think you're going to do? He looked at her for a long moment. His face was calm. His eyes were calm. I'll figure it out, he said. He walked out of the kitchen toward the front of the house. She heard the door open. Good luck, she called after him. She climbed 2 steps up the staircase and stopped. Something in her needed the last word, needed him to hear it and feel it. Her voice came down the hallway, sharp and certain. Each word dropped like a stone. Good luck being homeless. Desmond sat on the front porch step. The morning air was cool. The street was still. One of the neighbors across the road, an older man named Gerald, was dragging his trash bins back from the curb. Desmond picked up his phone and called Darius. His brother answered before the first ring finished. She do it. She did it, Desmond said. Send it. Already moving, Darius said. Desmond hung up. He sat quietly for another moment. Then he heard it. Faint at first. A low, rhythmic thumping from somewhere south. Gerald stopped on his driveway and looked up. A woman from 2 houses down stepped onto her porch with her coffee mug frozen halfway to her lips. The sound grew, steady and deliberate, until it wasn't far away anymore. A helicopter broke over the tree line at the end of Sycamore Drive. It was unmarked, clean white with no commercial markings, no news logo, nothing. It descended with practiced ease toward the open field, where kids sometimes played on weekends, and it settled onto the grass like it had done this 100 times. The rotor wash moved through the maple trees lining the street. Desmond stood, picked up his small bag from beside the step, and walked toward it. No hurry. The same pace he used for everything. The pilot stepped out and opened the rear door. Desmond heard the front door open behind him. He turned once. Diana was standing on the porch. Her coffee mug was gone. Her mouth was open. She was holding the door frame with one hand like she needed something solid. He looked at her. He nodded. Not a wave. A nod. Then he turned and stepped inside. The door closed. The helicopter lifted. Diana walked down off the porch into the front yard, her robe catching the rotor wind as the helicopter banked south and rose and grew smaller, And then was just a sound, and then was nothing. Gerald was still standing by his trash bins, watching the sky. So was the woman with the coffee mug. So was a teenage boy on a bicycle who had stopped at the end of the driveway and was looking at Diana with his mouth open. Her phone rang. The screen read, "Reginald." She stared at it. She did not answer. The landing pad sat on the roof of a building in Buckhead. No signage, no fuss, just clean gray concrete, a low railing, and a view of Atlanta spreading out in every direction like something that had been waiting to be seen from this height. Desmond stepped out of the helicopter and buttoned his jacket against the wind. A keypad beside the rooftop door accepted his code on the first try. The elevator inside took him down 4 floors without stopping. The penthouse was not what most people meant when they said that word. There was no gold, no chandelier, no marble waterfall in the entryway. It was clean and deliberate. Warm wood floors, floor-to-ceiling windows that faced the city skyline, a kitchen that had seen real use, books on the shelves, a worn leather chair near the window. The kind of place a person actually lived in, not one they posed inside. Desmond set his bag by the door. He stood at the window for a moment with his hands in his pockets. Atlanta looked the same as always. He went to the kitchen and made coffee. Lenora arrived 53 minutes later. She wore a charcoal blazer and carried a slim leather briefcase that she had owned for at least a decade. She did not hug him. She sat at the kitchen island, set her briefcase down, and accepted the cup of coffee he slid across the counter without being asked. "Talk to me," she said. So he did. He told her what he had told very few people in his life. He talked about his mother, Evelyn May Carter, who cleaned offices for 23 years and bought her house on layaway and never once let anyone outside the family know her business. He talked about the last conversation he had with her before she died, when he was 31 and Carter Bridge was just beginning to mean something. Don't let what you have become a leash somebody else holds. Her voice had been thin by then, but her eyes had not. He had restructured everything after the funeral. Deliberately, quietly. Carter Bridge Holdings became a private company insulated behind layers of corporate structure that took years to build properly. He kept his personal life modest, the Camry, the suburb, the plain watch. He told himself he would explain it all when the right person came along. Someone who loved the man, not the portfolio. He had believed Diana was that person. For a while, she had let him. Lenora listened without interrupting. When he finished, she set her mug down. 3 Fortune 500 contracts, she said. Real estate in 4 states. All of it under the company? All of it. And her name is on none of it. Nothing substantial, Desmond said. The house, the joint accounts, my personal retirement funds. Lenora nodded slowly. In Georgia, a spouse can only claim what she can prove belongs to the marital estate. What she doesn't know exists, she can't argue over. And what's structured inside a corporation? She tapped one finger on the counter. She doesn't get to that without a court order and a very specific legal argument. Her attorneys will try. Who does she have? Hargrove and Sills. Lenora's expression didn't change, but her chin dropped slightly. They're aggressive. They do deep asset discovery. They'll pull financials, subpoena records, look for transfers, commingling, anything that might blur the line between personal assets and corporate ones. And what will they find? Lenora almost smiled. A wall, she said. I've been building it for 11 years. Across the city, Diana was in the living room of the house on Sycamore Drive, sitting on the couch with her legs pulled beneath her, calling Reginald for the 3rd time in 2 hours. He answered on the 4th ring. I need you to tell me what that was, she said. Diana. His voice was smooth, controlled. I told you. Stay calm. A helicopter landed on our street, Reginald. So he rented something flashy on his way out. It doesn't change anything. You have the house. You have the accounts. You have a solid case. He wasn't upset, she said. Her voice had dropped. He didn't fight me. He didn't. He just nodded at me. There was a pause on the line that lasted one beat too long. "Stay calm," Reginald said again. She didn't feel calm. She felt like she had opened a door expecting a closet and found a hallway instead. Back in Buckhead, Darius had arrived and was standing at the window with his own coffee, looking at the skyline with his jaw set. He had been quiet since he walked in. Lenora recognized the look. A man carrying something he had held too long. "There's something else," Darius said. Desmond waited. 3 months ago. Darius turned from the window. "A shell company made an inquiry about that commercial property we hold through the Morrow Street subsidiary. Wanted to open acquisition talks." He paused. "It was Reginald. We didn't know it at the time. I only traced it back last week." The kitchen went quiet. "We declined the deal," Darius continued. "Standard response, property not available, not interested. But he got close enough to see the structure. Not close enough to know who owned it, but close enough to know it was someone." Desmond set his mug down. He looked at his brother, then at Lenora, then back at the window. It had never been just personal. The affair, the timeline, the push to file, it was coordinated. Reginald had gotten close to something, gotten nervous about who was on the other side, and pushed Diana to move faster before anyone could prepare. "Build the wall," Desmond said to Lenora. "She'll find a wall," Lenora said. And then another wall. Diana called Adrienne at 7 in the morning. She didn't explain anything over the phone. She just said, "Come over." And Adrienne, who had known her sister's voice for 40 years, was in her car within 15 minutes. By the time Adrienne arrived, Diana had changed out of her robe and made tea she hadn't touched. She was sitting at the kitchen table in a cream blouse and dark slacks, looking like a woman who had dressed for a meeting she didn't know how to start. Adrienne sat across from her. She was 2 years older than Diana, broader in the shoulders, and had inherited their mother's habit of going completely still when she was paying close attention. "Talk," Adrienne said. Diana talked. She described Saturday morning. Not the affair, not Reginald, not any of the plans she and Reginald had built together. Just the helicopter, the sound of it, the neighbors on their porches, Desmond walking across the lawn with one small bag like a man catching a cab. Adrienne let her finish. Then she said, "A private helicopter." "Yes." "With no markings." "Yes." Adrienne picked up Diana's untouched tea, looked at it, set it back down. "Di, what does Desmond do?" "He's a consultant. Software. He works with companies on their—" "What companies?" Diana opened her mouth, closed it. "What was the last project he worked on?" Adrienne asked. "What does he charge? Who are his clients?" The kitchen was very quiet. Diana had been married to Desmond Carter for 6 years. She had sat across from him at dinner tables and shared a bed with him and signed tax returns beside him. She knew he drove a Camry and packed his own lunch and coached kids on Saturday mornings. She knew he traveled sometimes for work. Charlotte, sometimes Dallas, sometimes D.C. She knew he made what she had decided was a comfortable but unremarkable living. She had never asked what he billed. She had never asked who hired him. She had assumed she understood where his ceiling was because she had looked at the floor and thought that told her everything about the building. "I don't know," Diana said. The words came out smaller than she intended. Adrienne looked at her sister for a long moment. "That helicopter didn't come from a man with a ceiling," she said. That afternoon, Diana called her attorney. The woman at Hargrove and Sills was named Patricia Vance, 45, precise, and expensive. Diana told her about the helicopter. Patricia Vance did not react with surprise. She reacted the way a surgeon reacts when a scan reveals something unexpected. Focused, quiet, and already reaching for the next instrument. "We're launching formal discovery," she said. "Full financial disclosure, business interests, investment accounts, real property, anything that could be classified as a marital asset. If he has something, We'll find it. How long does that take? We move fast, Patricia said. The formal request landed in Lenora's inbox before 5 o'clock. Lenora read it twice. Then she typed her response. It was cooperative. It was professional. It disclosed the house value, the joint accounts, Desmond's personal retirement funds, and every other piece of the marital estate that the law required her to hand over. It answered every question Patricia Vance had asked. It did not answer the questions Patricia Vance didn't yet know to ask. Lenora sent the response, closed her laptop, and moved on to the next item on her list. At 4:12 p.m., Desmond's phone rang with a number he didn't recognize. He answered anyway. Mr. Carter. The woman's voice was even, deliberate, and carried the particular weight of someone who had practiced the opening sentence many times. My name is Claudette Okafor. I believe we have a mutual problem, and I think we're both running out of time to solve it. Desmond was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. When do you want to meet? He said. She arrived at the penthouse at 6. Claudette Okafor was 46 years old, with close-cropped natural hair and the kind of posture that came from spending years refusing to make herself smaller. She wore a burgundy blazer and carried a manila folder held closed with a single rubber band. She did not look around the apartment when she stepped inside. She had not come to assess anything except whether Desmond Carter was worth her time. She sat at the kitchen island, set the folder down, and folded her hands on top of it. I was married to Reginald for 7 years, she said. I spent 2 of those years watching what he did to me, and the last 2 documenting what he does to other people. Desmond sat across from her and said nothing. She slid the folder across the counter. He opened it. The first pages were phone records, calls between Reginald and a woman named Brenda Holloway, spanning 14 months. Behind that were wire transfer receipts, handwritten notes, and at the back, a printed transcript with an audio file reference in the margin. The recording is on a drive I keep off-site, Claudette said. That transcript is from a conversation Reginald had with Brenda approximately 8 months into their arrangement. He had been coaching her through a divorce, told her to sign over her home equity into a joint investment vehicle. She let that land. The investment didn't exist. The equity was absorbed into a property deal he closed 14 months later. Brenda lost her home. She didn't understand what had happened to her until it was done. Desmond read the transcript slowly. Every line. Diana isn't the first, Claudette said. She's the 3rd woman I can document. There may be others. Desmond looked up. Reginald is 3 weeks from closing a real estate consolidation deal, Claudette continued, her voice staying level and flat. Once that closes, he restructures everything into it and becomes effectively judgment-proof. My attorneys can't move fast enough alone. I need someone with resources and legal infrastructure who wants him stopped. She looked at him steadily. I don't have a lot of options left, Mr. Carter. But I think you do. Desmond closed the folder. He held it in his hands for a moment, looking at the rubber band across the top. I'll be in touch, he said. Claudette nodded once, stood, and picked up her bag. She left the way she arrived, without small talk, without theater. The door closed behind her. Desmond sat alone at the island with the folder in front of him and the city going dark outside the windows. He thought about Diana, about the emails he had memorized, about the coldness in her voice on Saturday morning. She had been certain. She had been planned. But Brenda Holloway had also been certain, had also believed she was the one with the plan. Desmond pressed both hands flat on the folder. The question sat in the room with him and didn't move. Did Diana know exactly what she had signed up for? Or had Reginald looked at her the same way he had looked at Brenda, as something to be used up and set aside when the deal was done? He didn't have the answer yet, but he knew how to find it. 1 week after the helicopter, Diana bought throw pillows, cream and terracotta, $42 each from a home decor shop on Peachtree. She arranged them on the living room couch and stepped back and tilted her head the way people do when they're picturing how a room will look once the old life has been fully cleared out of it. She had already moved Desmond's framed photos off the mantel. They were in a box in the garage, face down. Reginald had been by twice that week. He didn't stay the night. They had agreed, for now, to be careful. But he sat at Desmond's kitchen table and drank coffee from Desmond's mugs and talked about paint colors, like a man measuring a space he had already decided was his. He liked the idea of opening up the back wall, maybe a deck. He knew a contractor. Diana let him talk. She liked the sound of it, the plans, the future tense, the way Reginald moved through a room like he already owned whatever he walked into. She felt like she was winning. Patricia Vance called her Thursday afternoon with an update on discovery. Desmond's attorney, a woman named Lenora Banks, was cooperating, but slowly. Every request came back, answered in the narrowest possible way. Nothing volunteered, nothing extra. It's resistance, Patricia said. Can they do that? They're doing it within the law. But I want you to understand, when someone responds this carefully, it usually means there's something they're being careful about. Diana absorbed this. Then she called Reginald. Walls, he said confidently. Every rich man builds them. We'll get through. You think there's more? I know there's more. But it doesn't matter. What's in that marriage? The house, the accounts, his retirement. That's yours. That's all you need. She believed him. She went back to looking at paint swatches. What Diana did not know, could not know, was that 40 miles across the city, her brother-in-law was sitting at a conference table with a document in his hands and an expression on his face that was very close to fury. Darius had been working a contact, a man who ran a mid-level brokerage in Buckhead and owed him a favor from 3 years back. The contact had done some digging into Reginald Okafor's recent financial activity. Not illegal digging, just the kind of careful listening that happens when you know the right people and ask the right questions. What he found, he printed. He drove it to the penthouse himself. Desmond read it at the kitchen island. He read it twice. 3 months ago, Diana had signed a document at a private dinner. Reginald had described it to her as a joint investment opportunity, something about a commercial property in Midtown, early access, a limited window. She had signed it slightly drunk, on his word alone, without taking it to an attorney or reading past the second page. It was not an investment agreement. It was a private loan document. Reginald had borrowed against the projected equity of the marital home, the home that was not yet hers, the settlement that had not yet been awarded, and used it as collateral to secure financing for a much larger real estate consolidation deal. Diana's signature was on it. Her name, her address, her future divorce settlement, promised to a lender before a judge had awarded her a single dollar. Darius set his hands flat on the table. He's not with her because he loves her, Des. Desmond said nothing. She's a line item, Darius said. She signs over the settlement. He absorbs the house into the consolidation deal, flips it, pays back the loan with her money, and walks. His jaw was tight. She may not even understand what she signed. Desmond looked at the document again. At Diana's signature. Neat, confident, slightly tilted the way it always was. He had seen that signature on birthday cards, on their marriage certificate. He picked up his phone and called Lenora. Lenora read the document in 4 minutes. Then she called a colleague, a financial crimes attorney named Marcus Webb, who had spent 12 years at the U.S. Attorney's Office. She was back on the line with Desmond in 20. This has crossed, she said. Into criminal? Potentially. Using projected divorce settlement proceeds as loan collateral before a settlement exists, and doing so without full disclosure to the other party. There are several statutes this could touch. Marcus is reviewing it tonight. A pause. Desmond. Her name is on this. I know. Whether she understood what she signed or not. I know, Lenora. The line was quiet for a moment. Handle it, he said. He drove to Evelyn's house just before 7. She lived in Decatur, in a small brick ranch with a rose garden along the front walkway that she had tended for 30 years. The porch light was on. She answered the door before he knocked. She had seen his headlights. Evelyn was 68 and had retired after 25 years of teaching middle school English. She was small, sharp-eyed, and had a particular stillness about her that reminded Desmond, sometimes, of his own mother. She took one look at his face and stepped aside to let him in. They sat in her front room on furniture that had not changed in a decade. She brought him sweet tea he didn't ask for, and settled into her chair, and waited with the patience of a woman who had spent a career waiting for children to tell the truth. Desmond didn't tell her everything. He told her enough. He told her Diana was involved with a man who had done this before, to other women, in other marriages. He told her that Diana had recently signed something she may not have read carefully. He told her to pay close attention to anything Diana was being asked to put her name on going forward. He did not show her the document. He did not mention Brenda Holloway. He did not say the word criminal. Evelyn listened without interrupting. When he finished, she sat very still for a moment, looking at her hands in her lap. "I knew something was wrong," she said quietly. "I could feel it." Desmond nodded. "She won't listen to me," Evelyn said. "I know," Desmond said. "Tell her anyway." Evelyn called at 9:45. Diana was in the living room with a glass of wine and her laptop open to a flooring website. Wide plank oak, the kind Reginald said gave a space a cleaner feel. She answered on the second ring, already softening her voice into the easy warmth she used with her mother. "Hey, Mama." "I want to ask you something," Evelyn said. Her voice was careful. School teacher, careful. "Have you been signing things lately? Documents, agreements, anything Reginald has put in front of you?" Diana felt a small, cold prickling at the back of her neck. She pushed it down. "Mama, I'm in the middle of a divorce. I sign things all the time." "Anything outside of the divorce? For him, specifically? Where is this coming from? Just answer me, baby." "I'm fine," Diana said, her voice sharpening. "Everything is handled. I know what I'm doing." There was a pause on the line. "Okay," Evelyn said, soft, without argument. That was worse, somehow, than if she had pushed. They said goodnight. Diana set her phone on the cushion beside her and looked at the room she was in the middle of remaking. The new pillows, the bare mantel, the flooring options glowing on the screen. The cold prickling did not go away. She reached for her phone and called Reginald. It rang 4 times. 5. 6. He didn't answer. Patricia Vance's office was on the 14th floor of a glass building in Midtown, the kind of place designed to make clients feel like they were already winning. Clean lines, leather chairs, a city view that suggested power. Diana had always liked coming here. She did not like it today. Patricia was already at the table when Diana arrived, not at her desk, but at the small conference table near the window, which was where she sat when the conversation required documents spread out in front of her. A thick folder was already open. Patricia's reading glasses were on. She did not smile when Diana walked in. Diana sat down. "Talk to me," Diana said. Patricia didn't talk. Not yet. She turned the first page of the folder toward Diana and let her read it. Diana read it. Then she read it again. The words on the page were clean and precise. Legal language, formatted neatly, professional in every way. But the number at the top of the asset summary hit her the way cold water hits you when you're not expecting it. Her eyes moved down the page, then to the next page, then the next. Carter Bridge Holdings, a private software infrastructure company. Contracts with 3 Fortune 500 firms. Real estate holdings across 4 states. All of it structured under corporate ownership. None of it accessible through a marital estate claim under Georgia law. The name at the top. Sole owner. Desmond A. Carter. Diana looked up. Patricia took off her reading glasses. The disclosure came in yesterday morning. My team spent the night going through it. She set the glasses down flat on the table. Diana, the marital estate, the house, your joint accounts, his retirement funds, it's real, and you're entitled to your share of all of it. But it is not what we were working from. Diana said nothing. What we were working from, Patricia continued, keeping her voice even and careful, was the assumption that your husband's assets were largely personal. They are not. The company is the asset, and the company is not marital property. The city sat bright and indifferent outside the window. How much? Diana said. Patricia told her. Diana heard the number and felt the floor shift beneath her. Not because it was small, because it was not. Because it was enormous, in fact. Enormous in a way that made the settlement she had been planning around look like a rounding error on a spreadsheet no one had ever shown her. She stood up. She picked up her bag. She thanked Patricia in a voice that did not sound like hers. She took the elevator down alone. She called Reginald before she reached her car. He answered on the second ring, which surprised her. His voice was tight. The particular tightness of a man managing something he did not want visible. I just left Patricia's office, Diana said. And? He has a company, Reginald. She was walking fast through the parking deck, her heels loud against the concrete. A real company, a big one. She said we can't touch it. A pause, short, controlled. That's not necessarily. The settlement I was expecting doesn't exist. Her voice cracked at the edges. The number we planned around, it's not there. None of it is there the way you said it would be. Diana. His voice shifted into something smoother, steadier. The voice he used when he was redirecting her. This is not over. Stay calm. Hold your position. Discovery is a process. Patricia says the walls aren't coming down. Patricia doesn't know everything I know. Diana stopped walking. She was standing beside her car now, keys in her hand. The parking deck smelled like oil and concrete. What did I sign? She said. Silence. 3 months ago. At dinner. The document you put in front of me. Her voice was steady now, quiet. What was it? It was a standard investment agreement. I explained it to you. Tell me again. Diana. Tell me again, Reginald. What did I sign? It was nothing. Quick. Flat. It was nothing that affects you. The call went quiet between them. Diana pressed her key fob. The car unlocked with a soft click. She got in and sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine. The parking deck was dim and still around her. She thought about the dinner. The wine. The way he had slid the papers across the table with one hand and refilled her glass with the other. The way he had said just a formality and smiled at her in that warm, unhurried way he had, and how she had believed him completely, because she had wanted to. She thought about Evelyn's voice on the phone. Have you been signing things? She thought about Patricia's face when she told her the number. Her phone buzzed in her hand. A text. From Desmond. We need to talk. In person. Bring whoever you need. I'll be at the house on Saturday at noon. She read it once. Then again. 6 words in the middle sat in her chest like a stone. Bring whoever you need. She called Adrienne. He wants to meet, Diana said. Saturday. At the house. She read the text aloud. Adrienne was quiet for a moment. I'll be there, Adrienne said. Okay. Diana, you need to call Reginald and tell him. I'll see you Saturday, Diana said. She ended the call. She sat in the quiet of her car. She did not call Reginald. The garden was the first thing he saw. Desmond stopped at the edge of the front walk and looked at it. The rosemary he had planted along the border was thick now, full and dark green. The knockout roses along the fence had come back strong this spring, the way they always did when they were cared for. He had turned this soil himself, carried bags of mulch from his car on a Saturday morning while Diana slept in, knelt in the dirt with his bare hands because he liked to feel things grow. He stood there for a moment. Just a moment. Then he walked to the front door. Lenora was on his left. Darius was on his right. Neither of them said anything. There was nothing to say. Diana had arranged the living room without meaning to, 2 chairs on one side of the coffee table, the couch on the other. The arrangement made it look like opposing sides, which it was, but the formality of it seemed to surprise even her when Desmond walked in, and she saw how it looked through his eyes. Adrienne was seated beside her sister, spine straight, hands folded. She looked at Desmond when he entered, and something in her expression moved. A quick, complicated thing. She pressed back down behind a neutral face. "Desmond," Diana said. Polite, measured. The voice she used at dinner parties. "Diana." He looked at Adrienne. "Adrienne, thank you for being here." Adrienne gave a small nod. Lenora and Darius settled on either side of Desmond as he sat. The coffee table between them was bare. Clean. Desmond set a thin folder in his lap and rested his hands on top of it. He looked at Diana directly. She held his gaze. She had prepared for this, he could tell. Her chin was level. Her posture was composed. She had dressed carefully, not in the way she dressed when she was trying to impress him, but in the way she dressed when she was trying to project control. Desmond spoke first, quietly. "Your email account was open on the kitchen counter on a Thursday night about 2 weeks ago." He said it like he was describing the weather. "You left in a hurry. Forgot to close it." Diana's jaw tightened. Barely, but he saw it. "I read the thread between you and Reginald Okafor." He paused for exactly 1 beat. "All of it." "Desmond, you wrote to him on a Tuesday, about 8 months into things, that you had found a firm you liked, that the attorney seemed sharp and knew how to handle men who think the house is theirs." He watched her. "You wrote in a message last October. He doesn't ask questions. He never asks questions. It almost makes this easier." Diana's hands moved. She pressed them flat against her knees. "You'd been together 14 months by the time I read it. You had consultations with 2 attorneys, Kim Reeves on Peachtree, then Patricia Vance. You landed on Patricia." He nodded slightly. "Good choice. She's thorough." Adrienne looked at her sister. "You and Reginald had agreed on a filing date," Desmond continued. 5 weeks from this Saturday. "That is—" Diana started. "And you wrote to him, near the beginning of all this, that I was the—" He paused. Let the pause sit. "Sweetest, dumbest man you'd ever met." The room went still. Diana's face changed. The composure cracked along the edges, like a plate that has been dropped, but hasn't fully broken yet. She looked at the floor, looked back up. Denial moved through her expression first, a quick hardening, and then something behind it shifted into something more defensive. "People say things," she said. Her voice was even but thinner than she wanted it to be. "That doesn't—" "I'm not here to argue about what you meant," Desmond said. "I'm here because you need to understand the full picture of what you've been doing, and what it's going to cost." Diana straightened. Her chin came up. "It doesn't matter what I said in a private email. What matters is what's in front of us, and what's in front of us is a divorce. And you—" Her voice steadied, hardened. "You don't have anything that changes that." Lenora opened the folder. She did not make a production of it. She simply placed the Carter Bridge Holdings summary on the table with one hand and slid it toward the center. It was Adrienne who reached for it first. She lifted the top page, read it. Her eyes moved slowly down the columns, across the numbers, to the name at the top. She turned to the second page. Then she set it down on the table and looked up at her sister. "Di." Her voice was quiet, almost gentle. "How did you not know?" Diana looked at the document. Her face moved through something Desmond had never seen on her before. Shock first, flat and genuine, and then behind it, already, the beginning of recalculation, the machinery of her mind visibly turning, searching for the new angle, the adjusted position. She opened her mouth. "I'm not done," Desmond said. He said it without raising his voice, without sharpness or heat. Just the simple weight of a man who had decided exactly how this would go. He reached into the second folder. He placed a document on the table. Diana's signature was at the bottom. She recognized it before she recognized the page. Diana stared at her own signature. It sat at the bottom of the page like a confession. Clean cursive, the way she always signed her name, a small practiced flourish at the end. She had signed it at a restaurant, the one on Peachtree with the low lighting and the good wine. Reginald had ordered for her. He had laughed at something she said. He had slid the papers across the table between the breadbasket and her second glass of Malbec, and told her it was an investment opportunity. A formality. Something about a joint venture. A position she'd benefit from once the divorce was behind her. He was already thinking about their future, he'd said. About what they'd build together. She had signed without her glasses. "That document," Desmond said, "is a private loan agreement. Reginald borrowed against the projected equity of this house." He kept his voice level and unhurried. "He used your signature to secure his position in a real estate consolidation deal, not your future together. His deal. The house was the collateral. You were the instrument." Adrian reached across the table and pulled the document toward her. She read it the way she read everything, carefully, completely, without rushing. Then she set it down. She did not look at Diana. She just set it down and folded her hands back in her lap and stared at the table. That silence was worse than anything she could have said. Diana's hand went to her mouth. "There's a woman named Brenda," Desmond said. "Brenda Caldwell. She was before you. The third woman Reginald ran this on. He got close to her during a difficult period in her marriage, advised her through her divorce, coached her on timing, helped her feel like she was finally making a smart move." He paused. "She lost her home equity. All of it. She is currently renting a room from her cousin in Decatur." Diana did not move. "A woman named Claudette Okafor brought me the file. Reginald's estranged wife. She's been documenting his pattern for 2 years. Phone records, wire transfers, a recorded conversation. He let that land. You were not the first. You were not the second." Diana's eyes filled. She blinked it back hard. "Reginald is currently under a financial crimes investigation," Desmond continued. "Your signature on that document has drawn scrutiny toward you as well." He let the sentence sit for exactly 1 beat. "Unless you cooperate with the inquiry." Lenora spoke for the first time since she had placed the Carterbridge summary on the table. Her voice was even, professional, and left no room for negotiation. "I've already been in contact with the relevant parties on your behalf, contingent on your full cooperation. Your attorney is aware of this and has been briefed." She looked at Diana steadily. "This is the only version of this that doesn't get worse for you." Diana was shaking now. A fine, visible tremor in her hands she couldn't stop. She had tried to call Reginald on Thursday, then Friday morning, Friday night. He had not picked up, had not texted back, had not, in 3 days, sent her a single word. She understood now why. "He hasn't called you," Desmond said. It was not a question. She shook her head. One small motion. Adrian exhaled slowly through her nose and looked at the wall. The room was very quiet. Outside, a car passed. A lawnmower droned somewhere down the block. Ordinary Saturday sounds from a world that had no idea what was happening inside this house. Desmond looked at Diana. He looked at her the way he used to. Directly, without armor, without performance. "I didn't hide what I had from you because I thought you'd do this," he said. "I hid it because I wanted to know if you loved me." His voice did not waver. It did not harden. It was just the truth, clean and unadorned, the way only the truest things ever are. "And now I know." Diana closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were wet. She didn't bother wiping them. Lenora slid the divorce agreement across the table. A clean document, neatly bound. Not thick, not theatrical. The marital home will be listed, and the proceeds divided equally. Joint accounts split per the current balance. Retirement funds assessed and allocated in accordance with Georgia statute. Lenora's finger rested briefly on the last page. Nothing more. Nothing hidden. Your attorney reviewed this yesterday afternoon and has advised you to sign. Diana looked at the document for a long time. Then she reached out and picked up the pen. Her hand was still shaking. The tremor moved through her fingers, through the pen, and into the slow drag of ink across the signature line. She signed. Desmond did not watch her do it. He was already looking at the window, at the front garden just visible through the glass, the rosemary thick along the border, the knockout roses burning red in the noon light. The next morning, Reginald's deal died, not slowly, not with warning. It collapsed the way over-leveraged things always do, all at once, without ceremony, like a table with one leg finally giving out. The flagged loan document had triggered a broader review. Federal financial crimes investigators pulled his real estate portfolio thread by thread. What they found underneath was not pretty. Shell companies layered inside other shell companies, projected collateral that existed only on paper, a pattern of private loan agreements, 3 of them now, across 3 different women, across 3 different divorces, each structured to funnel settlement equity into his deals before the ink was dry. Claudette's documentation reached the civil authorities on a Wednesday. 216 pages, phone records, wire transfers, time-stamped emails, and a recorded conversation that left very little open to interpretation. 2 years of quiet, methodical work delivered in a single folder. By Thursday, Reginald's 2 remaining investment partners had formally withdrawn. Both cited due diligence concerns in their letters. Neither took his calls. By Friday, the flagship development deal, the one built on the projected equity of a house that no longer had his name anywhere near it, was officially dead. The developer he had been in negotiations with released a single statement through a publicist and moved on. Reginald had no statement to release. He had no publicist anymore either. Claudette finalized her divorce from him 6 weeks later. Her attorney had been sitting on a very specific set of financial disclosures that Reginald had hoped would never surface. They surfaced. The settlement terms were precise and merciless in the way that only 2 years of careful preparation can produce. What remained of his liquidity after the deal collapse was divided, assessed, and allocated. He walked away from that marriage with significantly less than he had walked into it with. Civil litigation arrived from 2 directions shortly after. Brenda Caldwell's attorney filed first. A second plaintiff followed within the month. Reginald went quiet. No social presence. No new deals announced. No public appearances. Just a man sitting somewhere inside the wreckage of his own careful plan, learning what it felt like to be the instrument. He never called Diana. Diana gave her testimony on a Tuesday morning in a conference room that smelled like recycled air and burnt coffee. She cooperated fully. She answered every question. She handed over every document requested and confirmed every detail her attorney advised her to confirm. She was not charged with anything criminal, but the process cost her, professionally, within certain circles, and financially in ways that added up quietly over weeks. The house sold in 31 days. The proceeds were divided exactly as the agreement specified. She received her half, settled what she owed, and moved what was left into a checking account at a bank she had opened under her maiden name. She found a rental in Decatur. Small. 2 bedrooms. A parking lot view. She moved in on a Saturday with the help of a single hired truck and a neighbor she barely knew. Adrian called once to make sure she had gotten in safely. The call was 11 minutes long. After that, the calls came less often, then rarely. then mostly by text on birthdays. Evelyn did not call to console her. Diana did not expect her to. 18 months later, Desmond was on the sideline of a gymnasium in southwest Atlanta, clipboard in hand, watching a 13-year-old named Marcus try to execute a pick and roll for the 4th time without traveling. "Feet first, Marcus," he called out. "Plant before you move." The kids had no idea who he was. Not really. They knew he was Coach Carter. They knew he was patient. They knew he brought orange slices on Saturdays and never raised his voice, even when they deserved it. Carter Bridge Holdings had signed its largest contract 3 weeks prior, a federal infrastructure modernization deal. 7 years, significant figures, the kind of contract that made Darius physically exhale when he read the terms. Darius ran the day-to-day now. He had grown into it fully, steadily, the way good people grow into things they were always capable of. Lenora sat on the advisory board. She had insisted she didn't want the title. Desmond had insisted she take it. She had accepted without further argument, which was the most telling thing she had ever done. Desmond had a new apartment on the west side of the city, warmer than the penthouse, bookshelves, a kitchen he actually used again, something he had stopped doing in the last 2 years of his marriage without ever fully noticing. He had started with simple things: eggs, rice, a soup his mother used to make from memory. He was working his way back. There was a woman named Vivian, a landscape architect. Darius had introduced them without making a production of it, which was the only reason it had worked. She was funny and unhurried, and did not need anything from him that he wasn't ready to give. They were not rushing. Neither of them had any interest in rushing. Late in the afternoon, between games, a teenager on his team, a quiet kid named Jordan, sat down next to him on the bench and looked up. "Coach," Jordan said, "what's the most important thing you ever learned?" Desmond was quiet for a moment. He watched Marcus running the drill again, getting it right this time, feet planted, the motion finally clean. That the quietest man in the room, Desmond said, is very rarely the least powerful. He let that settle. And that patience, real patience, not giving up, but waiting with intention, that's the sharpest tool there is. Jordan nodded slowly, the way kids nod when they understand about half of something and are too proud to ask about the other half. Desmond smiled. He'll get there. The buzzer sounded. The next game was starting. Desmond stood, tucked the clipboard under his arm, and looked out at the court. "All right," he said. "Let's go." The sun came through the high gymnasium windows in long, flat lines across the floor. Warm, unhurried. He called the play. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.